What episode of what show just made you say I'm done with this BS and instantly quit watching the show forever? The X-Files. Season 6, Episode 1. Was watching on Netflix and was lost as heck. Then realized the movie was in between seasons 5 and 6. The movie wasn't on Netflix. Holy crap. Thank you. You just made me realize why I was so freaking lost. Castle did not need its last season. It was already starting to go downhill with Rick's lost time incident and the cases of time travel and Da Vinci Code, but they ended the second to last season nicely, then decided to make another one to blow it to pieces. I haven't finished watching that last season, to be honest, because it didn't seem worthwhile. The episode where Bond's hyper-logical, extremely intelligent assistant gets tricked into aiding a serial killing cultist. I recalibrated my expectations for what that show was though, and enjoyed several more seasons after that. You just have to know how much disbelief to suspend in advance to avoid being disappointed sometimes. I stopped Bones when there was this hacker who couldn't use computers, so he wrote a code into a freaking library book that took down like the internet. JFC. New Girl. When Jess and Nick got together and then broke up, I had said from the get-go if Jess and Nick do the Ross Rachel on and off again thing I wouldn't tolerate it. Which is a shame, because Ferguson the cat is the best character ever. The Jess-Nick dynamic is annoying, but I watch that show for two reasons. 1. Schmidt, absolutely hilarious. 2. The Nick and Schmidt dynamic. The two together are hilarious, and Nick is a close second for my favorite character behind Schmidt. Pretty Little Liars when they jumped forward 10 years between seasons and all looked exactly the same. It was awful way before that, but that was the point of no return for me. The time jump wasn't as bad as the fact that they were seniors in high school for 3.5 seasons. Weeds. When she became pregnant with the drug lord's baby, WTF Weeds. Shoulder kept being little boxes on the hillside. This is Jenji Cohen's problem. She comes up with a really good premise, but in order for her to produce new material, her characters and plot become increasingly wild and outlandish. OITNB had a great first season. The rest have been increasingly shittier. Weeds was great up until she burned down her suburban community and flees. Then it started to go downhill. My mom, who usually doesn't get super into TV shows, quit watching Downton Abbey after Matthew died. She also wrote a rageful post on Facebook about how the show writers were clearly determined to make sure no child on the show got to have two parents. It was hilarious. Bless her heart. I found out Matthew was going to die before I watched that episode. Show had been out a while when I saw it, so I just stopped watching. In my head, Matthew and Mary lived happily ever after. Sybil didn't die, and Edith tottered into the sunset with her old husband. The end. I'm not going back to Sherlock. The entire last season is putting Watson through the Truman Show multiple times and constantly torturing him by revealing that all his friends and family members are fake. That, and Stephen Moffat's annoying obsession with making Sherlock a god, and constantly teasing Moriarty's return with no payoff every time. The moral of this story, as far as I can tell, is that Sherlock is an untouchable Ubermensch who can't be beaten and it's everyone else's lot in life to be his toys. Writing Sherlock as a god is far easier. Every clue in A Study in Pink is thought out and valid. However, the last series was pretty much Ouija board level crap. When Negan killed the cameraman at the end of S06 of The Walking Dead, I'm a huge fan of the comics, even now, but the show always had me on the edge of my seat, debating on whether or not to stand up and throw my TV into a dumpster. That finale was the final straw. Playing Telltale's The Walking Dead made me realize how bland and lifeless the characters were in the show. It was the first time in my life where the game was somehow far more human than the show counterpart, even though they don't follow the same story. If you're still watching TWD and haven't played the Telltale games, I beg you to play them. They're better than the show in every way. The Telltale WD games are better than the show in many ways, but the seasons and spin-offs do decline in quality after the first season, which was mostly brilliantly written. It's similar to the problem the TV show has experienced. In particular, I thought the spin-off with Mitchen was somewhat forgettable. Derek's death in Grey's Anatomy. I just had enough by then. The whole point of the show was the love of Mayor Dead defeated all odds and then Shonda had to go and kill him. The show could have ended perfectly when Christina left for Switzerland. Derek and Meredith could have left for Boston and everyone would live happily ever after. So nobody is really mentioning cartoons. But Spongebob became too annoying to me. I used to love all the episodes, but then they came out with the episode Squid Baby, which was the most annoying piece of crap episode ever that wasn't funny at all. Stopped Spongebob right then and there. A shame really. It used to be really funny. The episode of The Walking Dead when Laurie got upset at Rick for killing Shane. Once Rick was back in the picture, Laurie made it extremely clear that Shane had to go, and when he does she loses her goddamn mind over it. I just gave up on the show after that and stuck with only knowing that series through its comic version. Haven't looked back since. I think there is a special secret ingredient in Shane's sperm that makes women lose whatever intelligence they have. It wasn't just Laurie doing stupid crap. Andrea slept with Shane and she really went downhill from there. It can't be a coincidence. I rarely do that, but when I did, the last seasons of Castle started with Beckett not being able to be with Castle because of some dumb as frick reason after however many seasons of build up. I was just like nah, sorry Nathan Fillion, I think you're great, but nah. Apparently, this was because they hated each other in real life and were refusing to work together. The last season of Sherlock was balls. I persevered up until now in spite of the awful fans on Tumblr and the endless ridiculous twists Moffat throws in so he can tell himself how clever he is. Eurus was the worst character. Oh sure, she's a violent psychopath in solitary confinement, but somehow the whole facility is under her control, and only Sherlock can get through to her. Frick off with that. And the rest of Moffat's self-congratulatory fanfiction crap. When Felicity got angry at Oliver for keeping the fact that he had a son from her and just up and walked out of her wheelchair, not only was it treating fans as unintelligent, but was hugely disrespectful towards disabled people. Arrow. Somewhere around season 3 I was like, okay, this crap is not exciting or new anymore. Just episode after episode something boring. Spongebob when they went to Atlantis and literally broke down the characters into very basic people with little personality. Squidward, snobby artist. Sandy, science ! Crabs, money, only money. Plankton, stupid violent little guy. Patrick, dumb. Spongebob, annoying. But Atlantis Squarepantis has David Bowie going for it. Castle after Beckett and Castle were kinda sorta dating. For a while every episode had Castle doing something that annoyed Beckett. They'd discuss if they should stay together, and by the end they would always make up. Got so repetitive after a while and it made Beckett seem like every other bitchy girlfriend character rather than the badass she once was. I hadn't watched Family Guy in a while so I decided to pick it back up some years ago. I watched the episode with Evil Stewie when it premiered and well, I just don't understand how some episodes are tame and legitimately funny, and how some are just edgy. That show lost something after it got cancelled and revived. I'm not sure what it is, but those first pre-cancellation seasons were a lot better. I watched How to Get Away with Murder as a cheesy, over-the-top fun that was really only being held together by Viola Davis' talent. I knew it wasn't great and didn't make much sense, but didn't really care. It was a distraction. Then they killed Wes. For no reason. Literally no reason. The showrunner admitted he just sort of came up with it midway through filming the season, and actually had no plans for the plot afterwards. It was just something he felt like doing. The whole thing went from so bad it's kind of great to just this is a waste of time. What the frick? I love season 1 but the later seasons really seemed like they were just made up as they went along. It made no sense. Downton Abbey, Season 2 Episode 8. Lavinia wasn't a great character to begin with. I never felt she and Matthew had good chemistry and couldn't understand why they wanted to get married. But when they killed her off and she explicitly tells him to go be with Mary, I decided I was done. The only reason Matthew wasn't with Mary was because he felt obligated to another woman, and that's just weak writing. God forbid they have some sort of compatibility issues that they need to work out. Instead of being sad that a main character's fiancé just died, I was relieved because now they could get back to the real romance, and that's not how death should be portrayed. In hindsight, I think you're right, especially where it ends up she leaves her fortune to Matthew just in time to conveniently bail Downton Abbey out of financial troubles. Too trite. Show was just downhill after that. Ugly Betty. The show was amusing as heck from what I remember with some really great points, but the last season was a train wreck. The episode I gave up on was the MC's ex-boyfriend came back and was her boss. They went on a date that was so awkward and cringy, I just couldn't stomach anymore. Read the end and I'm still glad I never finished it. The Walking Dead did this about 5 times before I definitively quit. I had Stockholm Syndrome from that abomination of bad writing, plot holes and inconsistency. I still watch it now and then. It's actually better if you pick a random episode without remembering what happened before. It's nice to watch on mute as well. Make up your own dialogue. I enjoy mocking the characters at this point. House of Cards. Season 3. After Frank became president, I lost interest. I tried making it through season 3 but I never did. It should have ended with the season finale where he gets the Oval Office then does that super aggressive victory punch on the desk. I tried watching more but I can't get through it. He made it to the top. There's nowhere else to go and the show makes that obvious. Supernatural. I think I watched the first 4 seasons and a half of season 5 when I realized it had become a big soap between forces of heaven and heck, and occasionally an in-between episode about a werewolf or vampire nest. I loved the scary episodes from season 1 and 2, but it became more and more boring teen drama Twilight bores. I'd say finish season 5 off. That's the original intended ending and it's really good. However, be glad you didn't watch farther than season 5. The amount of stupid crap that happens afterwards is inexcusable. When Beth died in The Walking Dead, it seemed so freaking moronic and ill-conceived to stab the police lady so meekly in the shoulder, and then abruptly get shot and die herself. What did she think was going to happen? Embroil all her friends in a shootout in a narrow hallway? Then her sister had to see the last of her kin die for no reason whatsoever. At that point, I realized the entire premise of the show was to make you feel as miserable as possible, with no sense of salvation at all. I'm fine and quite enjoy the odd dark series, but when it's non-stop misery, it just brings you down after a while. The last episode of How I Met Your Mother completely ruined the potential rewatch because I was so pee at the ending. Spoilers. Oh I had the same feeling. So this new character I was really liking was basically killed off in under a minute off screen so she can basically act as a breeding device for Ted so he can get back with Robin. Frick you. American Horror Story. Hotel. Got to the part in the first episode where the drug addict gets brutally raped by the creepy skinhead hiding under, or inside, IDK. I've tried to block this from my memory. His mattress and the scene goes on for like a full minute or 2. After that the commercial break came on and I just turned the TV off and said frick this. I didn't think I was going to like Hotel but honestly, it's worth a shot just for the character that Neo Hare plays in that season. Freaking beautiful. Scrubs. I loved that show up to the point where JD was a total butt to Elliot. Do all that work to get her and then tossing her aside with a cold and cruel I don't love you. It just seemed so totally out of character that it just made me actively root against him and I just couldn't go on. It was hilarious though after all that work to win her back. Elliot telling him he just wants what he can't have, and JD convincing her otherwise. They're laying on her couch and JD's monologue goes, "Sig, I finally have her. Record scratch R. I don't want her." Downton Abbey. Anna's rape scene in season 4. Just so pointless to the plot, character, series, everything. The character and her husband, Bates, have already been through the ringer once. Why pile on? Only put in there for ratings shock value and to me just proved what an Ashad Julian Fellows is. I turned it off during the scene and never watched it again. When Family Guy played Dancing in the Streets by Mick Jagger and David Bowie in its entirety, it just wasn't funny. They just spent 3 minutes on basically nothing. I'd excuse it if it led to a great joke, but it didn't. The punchline was not funny in the slightest. It was basically crap. We need to pad time. Let's just play a random music video. How won't that be funny? Because it's so random. XD. I'd forgiven the Conway Twitty jokes, but this was just on another level of unfunny. I haven't watched Family Guy since The Big C. It's implied at the end of season 2 or whatever that the main character's husband died of a heart attack. After sobbing my way through the whole episode, I decided that I couldn't watch the main character deal with her cancer and her husband's death, so I stopped watching forever. Spoiler, he didn't die. When Fiona cheated and Gus with Jimmy, she gets so many good things and opportunities but then just fricks them up for something stupid. I couldn't move forward with Shameless because I got so frustrated with her choices. Once upon a time, I think it was the episode where it's revealed that Pinocchio is the father of Captain Hook, who's the uncle of the fairy godmother who slept with Mulan's dad Shrek. But Pinocchio is mad because the Knights of the Round Table couldn't locate Narnia quickly enough in order to find the Alchemist's Stone and save Valhalla from the zombie apocalypse. And that resulted in Rumpelstiltskin dying for the 67th time, and this time without any possible means of resurrection. But thankfully it is revealed that Anna from Frozen possesses the ability to save him after all, because she had been kissed when she was little by Doctor Strange and acquired part of his powers. On House, a patient had been in a coma for a very long time, came out of it and immediately set out doing all these bucket list type things. I'm no doctor, but pretty sure you don't just bounce out of bed after being in a coma for a very long time. Haven't watched it since. Watching Arrow, when another dead character came back from the dead, I felt that this would be a recurring theme, and noped out. Shameless. How the show got Frank a new liver was so freaking stupid. If the show had killed Frank, it would have risen to epic levels. Instead it was a total balls cop out. Frank would have never gotten a liver. Also, his liver will last an exceedingly short amount of time, at which point we'll need to go through the same plotline they failed to resolve correctly the first time. There was an episode of Weeds where Nancy just sat in traffic the entire episode. If I wanted to watch someone sit in traffic, I'd just look at people on my way to work. Rip U-turn. To be fair, there's an episode of Malcolm in the Middle where they're stuck in traffic the whole time and it's pretty solid. When I realized Olivia Pope would just cycle between angry crying and being stoic every episode starting around season 3. Sons of Anarchy, season 6 episode 13, A Mother's Work. Obviously this is humongous spoilers territory, but both the twist ending of the episode, that Gemma murders Tara because Gemma is an idiot and B, a raging alcoholic, and the excruciatingly long build up to said twist, guaranteed that I would not watch another episode past that point. Sutter has a well-earned reputation for deliberately torturing both his characters and audience as much as possible, but the amount of time required to set up the ending of the episode was so long that any suspense was eliminated. Instead, the viewer got to spend an hour watching the whole thing get painstakingly set up, meaning that by the time the actual murder took place it wasn't shocking, and completely demolished my interest in what, up until that point, had largely been a fun and compelling show. For me it was when OP died. Seemed so wrong. Under the Dome, season 3 episode 1. You could have ended it at season 2 and everyone would be happy, but then they made another series and dragged aliens and dream networks and all sorts of terrible ideas into the show. Read the book. Far superior. Actually makes sense. Any show once a character has a baby, it stops being the show and starts being about the baby. I'm looking at you, TWD seasons 3+4. Monk. When he finally cured his OCD but then he runs into his wife but it turns out it's not her, but an imposter, so his OCD issues come back. That show had a couple episodes that were iffy and was overall lower quality at the end compared to the beginning. That said, it's still a fantastic show. One of my favorites. Once upon a time when Elsa and Anna became part of it. This was when Frozen was at its height, and it just looked like pandering trash. You had sex with a ghost, now you're pregnant with the Antichrist. American Horror Story had some dumb crap in it, but that just made it way too over the top. Pro tip for aspiring writers out there, you don't have to make every story an end of the world scenario. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.